I'm up in the Sligo area again in Ireland, and this time heading for Arroo Mountain. A day's hike outing instead of an overnight wild camp, and I'm really looking forward to this.
From the small track just off the road, I headed over to the first ridge of the day and followed this up to the first spot height. Reset my compass and headed over to the small loch with no name. It looked quite boggy down in the valleys, but there was also much less heather than on my last outing. Of course, I did manage to find some stretches and was thankful for my poles, which kept me steady as I climbed up to Lough Arroo. This is quite a large loch and would have looked really nice in sunnier weather, but the cold wind put me off hanging around sightseeing for too long. But I did manage to get great views of Trustmore and Teethbourne to the west as I headed up to the Trig Point of Arroo Mountain. Although there were stunning views out to the Atlantic and the far mountains of Donegal, the wind was cutting, and so I headed off down the mountain. I'd left it a bit late in the day, so I decided to take a more direct route back, and with darkness descending, I was glad to see the final ridge and the car.
Last week I was over in Keelogues Loch, which is over in that direction. I did say when I was on Keelogues Loch that was the end of the dietary range, but I think I stand corrected. There was Arroo Mountain as well, which is part of it, but I will double check, make sure I'm giving the correct information. Just parked up a little ways off. Had initially started coming down here, but I thought, no, it's getting a bit wet and boggy, and I don't want to get the car stuck, so I found a nice little spot for it further up. I'll be starting navigation just from a short ways down, which we'll go into that when I get there. Right, so here we are at the start of today's hike. We'll be heading over to Arroo Mountain. Now there's a lovely little loch just as you come across the first ridge, and beyond that is Arroo Loch itself. And once I get to top of Arroo Mountain, I'll talk a little bit about the megalithic tombs that are in the area. There's one particular outstanding one. It is actually built to actually face Arroo Mountain. So I'm going to do my usual navigation practice, and I'm actually going to introduce pacing as well now. I did have my ranger beads, my pacing beads. I went and attached them to my rucksack last night, and I attached them to the wrong rucksack because today I've got my day pack, which is a Dute, which is quite old, but it's a lovely little day pack. But first of all, let's take a little look at the map. Over here is the main Sligo Peninsula, and beyond this is the Benbulbin Range. And up in this direction here, which you'll see shortly enough, is the Atlantic Ocean. This is exactly where I am at the moment. So I've just come down this track. I intend to go from here, and I'm going to be pacing across this rise to start with, quite distinctive, and I'll show you that in a second, and up to this slope here. And then I'll be taking another bearing and heading up to this spot height. And then once I'm at this spot height, I'm going to be heading for this lochen here. And then when I get to that lochen, I'm going to be heading up to Lough Arroo. From end of Lough Arroo, you're following the whole ridge all the way along, fairly flat once you get there, and up to the spot height. It's Trig Point here. We'll be right at the cliff edge of Arroo Mountain, looking down over Cliffany and Mulletmore. So I've taken my first bearing, which is 256 degrees. Let's take a look at the plan. So at this point here, I'll be taking 256 degrees. Now from that point to the point on the slope where I'm going to be turning right and heading up to Trig Point 365, it's a bearing of 256, which I've set up. It's 400 meters at 3 kilometers an hour. 400 meters, that's 8 minutes. So we can see 8 minutes there. Now I've got to climb up 4 contours, so it should take me about 12 minutes to get there. The ground is looking a little bit rough, so it wouldn't surprise me if it took me 15 minutes. So I'm walking at a pace of 66 paces for every 100 meters. So that's 400 meters, and that works out to 264 paces. Now remembering that when you're doing paces, it's not counting left and then right. You count on the 1 foot. So I step off on my right, and my first pace will be on my left. And then you count every time you put down a left foot. I'm heading off in that direction. That's 200 paces to this point. I just have to take into account going uphill because the 64 paces are going horizontally. So I'm going to have to add a few. That's 250. Okay. All right, that's 264 paces. But it was much steeper there than I was expecting. So I know I've got to go a little bit further. From a time point of view, I've got 11 minutes. And I'll still keep counting the paces, so we'll see how many over this sort of terrain or coming up that steep rise I should be counting. A total of 12.5 minutes, and the paces were 290. So difficult to estimate them going up that steep rise. We're going to be heading up here, and so the pace count should be far more accurate. So let's take another look at the map at this ridge here. Now I know I'm there because although the pace count was a bit more than I was expecting, because it was much steeper up these ridges than I initially thought, but the timing is correct, and I know I'm on the correct place because the land is falling off to the left and also falling off to the right. And now I'm heading from this point here up to this spot height, and that spot height there is 365 meters. So I'm going to be changing my compass to 338, and it's 450, so it's 297 paces, let's say 300. 450 is at 3 kilometers an hour is 8 plus 1 is 9, and there are 3 contours heading up 12 minutes. So I set my compass for 339. I put the needle in the dock, bring it up, and I'm heading that direction. I got here in just under 7.5 minutes. I said 12, and it was just under 300 paces. I got here a little bit earlier, which is actually showing that the wind is making that noise, which is actually showing that I'm walking at a pace of 4 kilometers an hour. Now, the next stage, I've got 1 kilometer, 1,000 meters to do. And at 3 kilometers an hour, that's giving me 28 minutes. Now, if it was 4 kilometers an hour, I'd have 15 minutes plus 8 contours going up, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23 minutes. So it's 23 minutes if I'm doing 4 kilometers an hour, or 28 minutes if I'm doing 3 kilometers an hour. I would change it, but I'll be heading straight down here, and then there's a reasonable climb there, and it looks to me as if the ground is getting a little bit rougher. So I'll bear it in mind. So it's either 28 or 23, and I won't count the paces because when it gets beyond half a kilometre, it's better to go off timing, I find, than pacing, because you can just lose count very easy. And I forgot my pacing beads there, so I'm counting on my fingers, so I don't want to do that for 1 kilometre. It just wouldn't be fun. So you've got a nice view of the Atlantic Ocean. This is Lough Melvin, and that's looking into Fermanagh, Northern Ireland, and round to the right you'd be heading for Enniskillen, and if we came round to the left we'd be heading for Sligo, and up in that direction you can see the mountains of Donegal, and some fantastic mountains up there. I'll be heading up there one of these days. Yeah, there's some beautiful mountains up in Donegal. It's just a little bit further to go, and there's plenty here for me just at this moment in time. But for now we're heading off in this direction. So I've set my bearing for 338. I put the needle in the dock, I bring the compass up. Yeah, and it's such a clear day today, I can see exactly where I'm going. Taking a look over this rise, it's looking very boggy down there, so I might have to take a slight detour, but that is very wet. So I want to go straight down there and up, but I think it's worthwhile just heading around to the right a wee bit. And also, as I said before, practicing all this navigation and timings and pacings, practicing in the good weather when you can actually see where you're going, gives you the confidence of navigating in the bad weather, because in the bad weather it wouldn't be so obvious on this terrain where you were if the mist was down. So you just have to make your plans and be confident in your timings, in your bearings, and if you are off you won't be too far off, but the idea is not to keep going if you think you've made a mistake. To stop, assess, look at the contours, feel is the ground sloping away to the left or the right. The big thing is not to panic, because you just keep going on in a way that you think, oh yeah, this feels right, and invariably it doesn't. I've done that myself in the past. I thought, well actually this feels right, and I've been quite a few degrees off. And a few degrees off after 5-10 minutes can leave you astray in quite a reasonable amount actually. And in these hills there aren't any tracks. So in the popular areas, then there'd be tracks that you could follow, and you could maybe navigate back to where you last were and pick up the track again. But there's no tracks around here, or very, very few tracks, and very few people as well. There's plenty of sheep and there's a few farmers, but I've never met, well no, that's wrong. I have met farmers once in 2 videos ago actually, up on the hills. But that's a rarity as well, which is a great thing, because it's lovely to be out here on your own. And it's actually great having the lighter day pack on for a change. instead of the 20 kilogram pack, which has been great with all the camping gear. And if I'd come out last night, that's exactly what I would have been doing over this same route. But it's lovely to have a very light pack. It feels like nothing in comparison. Yeah, looking quite wet down there, but maybe not as bad as I was thinking. I'll get back on the route that I was aiming for once I've just gone back down past the worst of this. Yeah, lo and behold, I did what I was just talking about, going down that ridge line there. Once I got down and I moved over to avoid the real boggy area, I found I was heading off up the hill, slightly wrong direction. So I just corrected that, got my compass out and got back on track. So I was heading off to the right, which I would have been anyway, because I did go off to the right on purpose. But what I found myself doing was staying a little bit too much to the right. I didn't come back and correct it enough. But I felt it and I thought, get the compass out and just check my track. I did say when I was heading down the hill, I'd lose sight of the green area that I was aiming for in the distance. So you have to keep checking your compass. When I do come over this small ridge, I should then pick up the green area that I could see when I was on top of that hill back there. I must admit, when I was getting up this morning and it still looked a bit rough outside, I thought, oh, do I want to go? Of course I wanted to go, but I did give myself some second thoughts. But not too long, because I always feel much better for the rest of the week if I get out. And if I hadn't gotten out when I had the chance, then I would have regretted it. I know that. This is fantastic. Just checked my watch and it's 22 minutes, another 5 minutes for a 3 kilometre an hour pace. So I think it's probably a little bit in between. The going's really good here. Last time I've been out, it's been heather up to my knees, but it's much more comfortable than having to do knee raises with every pace.
Well, I spoke a bit too soon, as I managed to find a good bit of heather to practice my knee raises. But I knew I wasn't far off the loch at this stage, so I kept my head down, and with the help of my poles giving me something approaching 4-wheel drive, I ploughed on and was soon cresting the ridge.
There we go, the Lough. Perfect. Well, the bearing was spot on, so I'm pleased with that. And I had 27 minutes, so a little bit shorter than the 3 kilometres an hour, but not much, so we'll stick with 3 kilometres. Right, so I'm at the small Lough now. There is a spot height just over to the right of it, so I need just to walk over there because that's where I've taken my calculation from. Actually, no, what I'll do, I'll redo it from this corner up to the Lough, slightly different bearing. And I'm coming up with a bearing of 229, 230 degrees. We'll say 230 degrees. It's almost parallel to the original track, but it's 500 metres. The same contours are involved. So 500 at 3 kilometres an hour, we'll stick to that. So 500 is 10 minutes there, and there are 5 contours, so that's 15 minutes between that point there and getting up to the Lough. And when I the needle in the dark, bring it up to the horizon, and I'll be aiming for the hump on the ridge.
In the past, I looked at people who use poles as non-serious hikers, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The correct technique allows me to use my arms and shoulder strength to keep going, when in the past I would have had to stop to recover. They're also a major help when carrying a heavier pack, keeping me stable and on my feet instead of face down in the bog. Mind you, that sometimes still happens.
And here we are, Arroo Lough. Very good. So we said 15 minutes, and it's 13 minutes. Not quite there yet, of course, though. I did say to the corner. So yeah, so I'm pleased with that. That works for me. And it's a lovely Lough. If your sun was out, this would be spectacular. Well, it's spectacular anyway, in some way. Doesn't matter what the weather is. So just get round to the other side, and I'll be taking my bearing up to up to Arroo Mountain itself. So I do keep forgetting to do a call to action. So if you're still with me, please give me a like if you're liking it. Don't if you don't. Give me a dislike if you're still here and you don't like it. I'd be surprised at that though. Why would you be? And if you haven't subscribed, then maybe you do that as well. It just helps the algorithm. It's not that I'm overly bothered about that, but it's nice to see a bit of interaction and comments. You know, if you've got anything to comment about the DJI, is the footage good? It hasn't locked up on me yet, which is brilliant. And what's the sound like there? I will be getting a new mic too, which I can Bluetooth to it. I'll actually show you now the receiver plugged into the side of it. It's okay, but it's not waterproof, and I want to come away from that, because most of the weather I'm out in is pretty mucky, and if I'd had to rely on the unit with the receiver in, I just wouldn't be videoing here today, because it would have got wet and damaged my new camera. I wouldn't want to do that. But it's beautiful. Beautiful up here.
Whenever I can, I try and avoid climbing over fences. The last thing I want to do is any damage and antagonise the farmer due to a careless attempt at crossing over. But where necessary, I go out of my way, detouring a fair distance at times, to find the sturdiest post I can. My aim is to cross leaving no sign on the wire of having done so.
The first ridge there, that's Keelogues Mountain, and if we see the cliffs just to the right, and if you followed it around to the midpoint, just about there, that's the peak of Keelogues Mountain, and just to the left is the loch where I had the wild camp last week, and that was interesting. That was when I had the QU Stormstar out and made a bit of a hash of taking it down in high winds and rain, but it was a great camp. Really enjoyed it, learnt a lot from it. And then beyond that you can see the towers of Trustmore. If you carried on, you'd come to Benbulben and the town of Sligo. So we can see also in the distance, far distance there, you just about see Mulletmore. That's the harbour itself, and just around about there, to show if I'm pointing at it exactly right, that's the very big old castle. That was Lord Mountbatten's residence. It wasn't just his, but he favoured it. But that's a different story, and that's not fun for me to tell, but because I'm only here for hiking and camping. I'm just going to get down here to the edge, and then we'll be heading off in that direction for about a kilometre, and that'll be the Arroo Mountain itself. Well, it's a quick sandwich break. The weather's turning a bit, getting far windier. We're heading off to Arroo Peak now, so it's 1,500 metres, 36 minutes. So I've started the timer, and we're off on the final leg before we turn back for the day. Yeah, so it's getting far chillier now. So I've got the sealskin mitts. These are brilliant. 36 minutes to the peak. See what the weather's like there. Mightn't be staying there too long. Heading quickly back, I think. I think it's about 6 o'clock when it gets. When it does finally get sunset, and I don't want to be caught out here if the weather turns. But so far so good. I just checked my watch, and we're at the 35-minute point. So this should just be the final ridge, and beyond that I think this is the peak. But we know for certain when I climb it. Trustmore Tower looking very nice, the rays of the sun there. Ah, there's the Trig Point. Okay, only a few feet away, that's great. And there's Lough Melvin. Over in the distance there's the mountains of Donegal. And I see showers coming, not great. I don't think I'll be hanging around here for too long. Certainly won't be getting the drone up. Over in that direction is a megalithic tomb called Creevy Court Tomb. It's reputed to date, well, it does date from the Neolithic early times there, so from about 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, there were people here building tombs, coming up here, farming the land. It's specifically laid out so that it points to the Arroo Mountain range here. And in the spring and the autumn equinox, the sun illuminates the tomb. It doesn't specifically enter a chamber like a lot of them, but it more illuminates the whole area. The weather was supposed to be much better. I had my stove with me. I was going to get a brew going, but I'm not going to now. I did decide to change my route back and do a little bit of a straighter route.
The video did not convey how cold it was at the Trig Point, but once I got down from the ridge, the wind chill dropped off nicely and I could easily see the smaller loch in the distance, so I was able to put my map aside and just relax into the hike. That was until I realised I had miscalculated sunset, which would be on me an hour earlier than I had anticipated, so I needed to motor on.
Well, I've left this a bit late to get off the mountain. It's getting dark. I did intend to be back a bit sooner. Well, this is the sort of conditions and the situation you get yourself in when the navigation is just got to be there. So very easy going out, very easy coming back here as well. But as you can see, I've left it late. The light is going, and the mist is coming. But I'm following my bearing. I've got 30 minutes to get from where I was to the road. It's 21 minutes now, so about another 9 minutes. Following my bearing, and I should be on the road. So it's all looking good so far. But this is where if you can't navigate, where people would start making mistakes, going to a hill that they think is right. Because back there at the 15-minute point, it looked like I'd come across the spot height I was aiming for, and then I thought, hang on, this can't be right. I've only done 15 minutes here. Although it felt a lot longer because it was quite tough going. But as I got over that, I could see, oh yeah, the hill I was aiming for. Well, this is the last ridge, and I recognise the hills over there, and the cliff faces. Oh yeah, and there's the white of the car. Great. So I was a little bit off. I had aimed to come across the top of that. The light is fading very fast now, but we're not far now. There is rough ground, so I'm going to put this away and motor on. So till next time, thank you.